Hello everyone and welcome to a super quick tutorial slash explanation of AWS Lambda. We were originally planning to do this on something else, but because of in-text we actually ended up using Lambda a ton, and so we thought it would be good to talk about it. So here's a bunch of stuff you should know on Lambda, and we're also going to take a look into some services, or not into some services, we're going to take a look into Lambda and how you actually use it. So the three most important things that you should probably know when it comes to Lambda is that first, this is how you can run code without provisioning servers. So in other, I guess through other methods that you can run code in the cloud, there's things like EC2 instances, and we've done that in class where we've set up a web server and deployed some cloned some code onto it, and you can run that and kind of have your website up there. The reason we went with Lambda for our Intex project is because we wouldn't actually have to pay for a server to keep it running. And so when you use an EC2 instance to do something like that, what you're doing is you are paying to keep that server up and running, regardless of if it's getting any traffic or not. Whereas with Lambda, if you jump down to this third bullet point, you'll see that the pricing here is based on requests and the duration of execution. And so what we ended up doing for Intex, or what you could do, is use a service like Vercel or Railway, where you get some free deployment through them. So say if it was a React project, you can deploy Vercel for free. And for your backend, you can just have a series of Lambda functions that are serving up data. And what happens is, because I'm not actually paying for a server to serve up this data, every time these Lambda functions get hit, they just pass the data. And the free tier, I think, for AWS is something like, I don't know, it's like 1,000 concurrent requests, and you stay with the free tier. I can't remember if they break it up by time or what they do, but basically you get a ton of free requests and a ton of free time to save up data, and you don't have to pay for any of it, and you don't have to pay for a EC2 instance. So that's a little bit about running code without provisioning servers. You don't have to actually designate any server. You don't have to pick an instance type. I think on Beanstalk you still have to do that. I don't remember if Beanstalk is serverless or if they have you provision it yourself. I don't know, but that's that. Underneath that, it says event driven. So Lambda functions are very cool because they integrate really well with other AWS services. So for example, if you're using, we'll say S3, and anytime someone uploads to an S3 bucket, you want to perform some action on that object, this is a great way to do that because it's already integrated with AWS architecture. So there are a lot of built-in native functions that you can call in Lambda that will automatically pull from these other things. And so for the example that I'll show, and what we ended up doing over Intex, holy cow, I'm out of breath. For what we ended up doing on Intex is we used Amplify and Cognito to deploy our front end and have some authentication in the front. And because those are both already AWS services, to change those, like for permissions and stuff like that, all we did was call some native built-in functions in our Lambda architecture, or in a couple of our different Lambda functions, that could go in back to Cognito and change some of the roles and give different permissions and things like that. So we'll break into that. But all you need to know is when you're using other AWS services, they work really well with Lambda because you can target what happens in those services, like uploads to S3 or clicks in your web server, whatever, I don't know what it might be. And you can respond to those via Lambda functions very easily. The last bullet point, and arguably one of the most important because you are paying for this, is that price is based on the number of requests times the duration of execution. So some functions are very easy to execute. Say like every time someone hit a Lambda function, you just want to return a string. That takes like almost no time, virtually no time. And so if you have 1,000 requests times the amount of time it takes to run that function, that's what you actually end up paying for. That said, I did say at the beginning, the free tier for Lambda is very, very high. Like you can do a lot of stuff on Lambda without actually having to ever pay for anything. And so this really doesn't come in until later. And even then, when it does, it's something super cheap. I would have to look up some specific information on that, but you can scale up to millions of requests, and you're paying like 0.0002 cents for every second of execution on those requests, which is just very almost like non-existent. You're paying like pennies pretty much for these. So with that said, let's jump into a tutorial. Okay, so I am in my console right now, and all you need to do is you can search Lambda up here, or you can see I've already used it, so I'm just going to select it right there. And you can see that we've done quite a bit of work in Lambda over the past week. So if I jump in here, I can view all my functions. Or if you want to create one, you can just click up here and click create function. Maybe we'll look at that in a second. So if you click into functions, you can view all the ones that you have already. I will just jump into one just to show you. Well, I guess we can show a couple. So first off, our backend was built on Lambda. So this is actually our Intex, just like the main C# API. Lambda allows you to write in a variety of different languages and then upload them, or you can just write them natively in like Python and JavaScript is what they allow. Currently, I think there might be some more, but you can see this is actually a .NET 6 runtime, and we just uploaded the entire folder up to the cloud, or up to AWS. So in this, if we look at it, so you can see that this is just like standard C#. This is just a C# controller, and I had things broken out. You see, like literally just how you would have written, how we've written traditional APIs in C# when we were working with React frontend. That's all we did. You can see the different requests we break out into. In our context file, everything like literally looks the same. This is just, we make a class here. And so what we did then is, I guess technically, this might not be a good tutorial, but basically there are presets in .NET that you can download that allow you to integrate these directly with Lambda. And so I'm actually using a stencil that already had a lot of integration with Lambda before I even started. And then I just went in, changed a couple things, added some things so that it would connect up to my AWS account. And then I just pushed it, and that's how it's up there right now. So it's super easy. They do give you a bunch of command line tools as well. So you can, if you want to do it from here instead of doing it from the console, which honestly doing it from the command line is way easier than doing it from the console. But they give you a ton of resources to just go ahead and start building these on your own computer. So this is literally what ours looks like. It's just a bunch of stuff that you've already seen before in C#. On this end, because this actual, like the Intex API that we wrote, because there are so many files in it, you can see like way more. There's a lot compared to other more minimal Lambda functions. It doesn't actually let us edit code like natively, like in the console. However, with like the Python runtime or the Node.js runtimes, you can actually do that. So we can take a look at some of those. So let's take a look at this. The runtime is just Node.js, and we're going to look at how we actually changed groups in Cognito. Actually, let's do, yeah, this one's fine actually. So when you open up a new Lambda function, in the Node or in like the JavaScript or Python runtimes, those are small enough that you can actually edit them in console. C#, there's just too much going on, so it doesn't let you edit it in here. You have to edit it like locally and then push it up. But this code is literally just JavaScript code. So you can see we require the SDK. I'll probably clear a bunch of this stuff out so you guys don't mess with my stuff. But yeah, we just wrote a function called exports.handler, which is, you do need this in like all of your Lambda functions, at least in the JavaScript runtime. I can't remember what they are in the other ones, but we just take in some event, we connect to the region we're in, which I will blur out, and then we have some parameters that we're going to give to this function. And so you can see like this list users function, which gets all of our users from Cognito. I didn't write this at all. You'll see there's no other code, there's no other files, there's only one file in this function. That's this one. And so this is actually a function that's provided by AWS in the AWS SDK that lets you connect to other services in the cloud. So like I said, in this one, we're actually connecting to Cognito. So super easy. This is 13 lines of code. Of actual functionality, it's like one line of code. This is pretty much a one-liner after we set up the the configuration and stuff. But this allows us to pull all of our users directly from AWS Cognito, and then we can expose that via some API like endpoint. You can see we have function URL right here. Right, and so pretty much what happens is anytime I ping this endpoint, it's just going to return all of this. Some other stuff you can do here, if you click on to configuration, this is where we actually configure that function URL. This is like the API endpoint that you can ping or hit. We can also add some security, so it gives you some options for like, do you want to allow cores or not? Which methods do you want to allow? From where? Some other header stuff. Do you need credentials? You can kind of set up API keys and all that stuff. And environmental variables. So this is actually if you have stuff in your code, you want to do some secret keeping, you can do that here. All sorts of fun stuff. You can set up, like, configure it to be within a certain VPC, permissions. You have a ton of stuff you can do with these functions in terms of configuration. So with that said, let's go in and we'll just make one really quick so we can show you what happens. So I'm just going to say create a function. And yeah, we'll start with just a simple hello world example. We'll say teach yourself. And let's do this. Yeah, Node.js is fine. Fine. Okay, cool. So that's all we need to do. For this one, like I said, there's no actual, I didn't configure any security or anything like this. We're just going to say it's called teach yourself. We're going to do on the Node.js runtime. We're just going to drop this to Node.js 16. I've had problems with it, 18. So we're just going to run it on 16. Architecture, you can select like whichever one of these. I've run everything we did for Intex on the x86-64. And then you just click create function. Okay, so now you can see this function has loaded up. This was code that they already wrote for me. And it's just going to take in some event, and then we're going to respond with a status code 200. We're going to say hello from Lambda, and we're just going to return that response. So now to actually expose this endpoint, what you're going to do is you're going to come to configuration, function URL, create function URL. And for this, you can have it authenticate based on like IAM and roles and like some other stuff. However, I'm not going to do that because I just want to hit it really quick. So I'm just going to say none. It basically means it's going to allow everything. We can allow all allowed cores, so we can accept from everything. And I'll say we're going to allow get requests on this. So that should be all we need. If I hit save, it's going to give us a function URL. You see we have this now. And then if I copy this and head into Postman, actually, I think I can just do this from the browser. If you just post this in your browser, because it's going to default to a GET request, look at that. Now it says hello from Lambda. And that's pretty much it. That's everything you need to know to get started on Lambda, how to make a function, how to expose the function URL, security stuff, what Lambda does. And I'm actually just going to go in here and refresh this. I'm going to go in here and delete this because we don't need it anymore. And that, and on this, and that is it. That is AWS Lambda.